Putting on muscle is easy. What the hell am I talking about? That doesn't sound like the smartest thing for someone to say that is selling an app teaching people how to put on muscle. But it's a very important concept that I want to get across and I want to convey. And I have that there as a quote. The quote is saying, it's from Jordan Peters saying, putting on muscle is easy. I'm not even know if I'm, saying exactly the phrasing right, but the sentiment's there. And obviously he's not the first person to say it. I just like the way that he says it. The way that he speaks to it, the way that he, expands on what that comment actually means. And some of it is really easy. He talks about ticking all your boxes. And so again, you could really write, which I'm going to start talking about here, 5 or 6 things that are going to be the easiest things ever to write, the easiest things ever to just tick the box on paper as far as are going to have the highest correlation to success within the bodybuilding world, within the muscle building world. The problem, and it's not really a problem, but the reality is, while it is very simple and very easy on paper, it is also the stuff that is hardest to adhere to. And so some of it is hard to adhere to in a very short period of time, the ability to endure some pain. And some of it is extremely hard to adhere to consistently for very long periods of time. If you want to take yourself to your genetic limits, as far as, again, even regardless of genetics, regardless of drugs, whatever, if you want to take your physique as far as humanly possible, realize as a bare minimum, it's going to be a decade. I would even argue people can generally, depending on when they start, produce results upwards of 2 decades from when they start. I don't think it's too much of a stretch. You're definitely getting a point of diminishing returns, after 10 real hard years of consistent work. But imagine if you want to take your physique as far as possible, over a 20-year period of time, you have to be consistent with a lot of big things, not just for a meal, not just for a day, not just for a week, month, but years and ultimately decades on end. And so again, this is where it really comes to the point where, yeah, it's not that complicated, but it's hard to do. So what is the point of pointing all this out? The point of pointing all this out is that some people will take this very simple knowledge and either will not recognize it within themselves, or dismiss it, and basically get lost in the weeds with stuff that doesn't really matter that much, or at least not comparatively. So again, we're going to get into, and I'm going to discuss towards this as I break it down just a little bit more. There's a lot of nuanced stuff that is important. It is important if it's done in the right sequence of the bodybuilding world. But there are a whole lot of people out there that haven't paid their dues, essentially doing the things that are going to have the most return. And they'll spend time, effort, and emotion arguing over stuff that couldn't matter more. And the things on here, perfect examples, are people argue about the amount of volume. They argue about what is the perfect split. They argue with what is the perfect macro ratio. They argue with how close you should train, to failure. And again, all those things in and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with information. There's nothing wrong with trying to have the best place to start or make decisions that make the most sense specific to you. But some of these same people at the same time have never actually pushed to the point within a set where, in my opinion, they could be, their working sets are 5 reps short of failure. They may have never actually adhered to any diet consistently, and they're arguing about macros. They're arguing over the perfect program and the perfect split, and they've never adhered to any split for even weeks or months on end. And so the whole point is, I want you, as you watching this, to have know the truth and know the reality of what is going to pay the biggest dividends for your time and for your effort. And I want you to really be honest with yourself, take a real good look at yourself. And again, if muscle building is important, and again, the answer could be no right now. I mean, honestly, I speak transparently about right when I started, I didn't care about sleep. I didn't care about nutrition. I just wanted to go smash stuff in the gym. And then at some point in time, actually putting on muscle became more important. So I had to look at what I was doing and make a shift and prioritize certain things. So again, this is all speaking to if your goal is to be optimal. Obviously, everything on the site is designed to take things as far as possible, realizing that you could have a season in your life where, again, it's just more about managing expectations. That's why I have that in the video, is basically to look at what you're doing and manage the expectations of that. And realize if you're not producing results, if you're not progressing, look at these big things first before you turn into one of the people that goes online and argues with somebody, about the angle of an exercise being 5.5 degrees off, when you've never actually trained hard in your life. So some of the things, again, just to look at, to give some things that are going to be consistent across the board. So if I'm really looking at what has produced success, what has produced results all across the board, really controlling for, whether it's a male, female thing, whether it's a natural enhanced thing, whether it's young, old, whatever it is, regardless of the goal, like what are the things that are consistent among people that take their physiques as far as possible? The things that are consistent is progressive overload. And again, I have another video where I discuss, obviously there's a component of form to that. But again, basically, progressive overload has to be shown, has to be documented and demonstrated over a long period of time. I even see people at a relatively high level that just do something different every single session. They go in and they confuse the muscle. Yeah, you're confusing it. That's why it doesn't ever grow. It doesn't know what the hell's going on. You go into the gym, you have to show some sort of documented progression. Yes, there's going to be periods of time. If your form is a 2 out of 10 and you progress it to a 9 out of 10, you might not be able to write that on paper, but obviously that's a form of progressive overload. That's going to have massively higher demands on the trained muscle than shit form. So again, yes, there's some times where things won't be written on paper, but long term, obviously you can't keep progressing. You're not going to keep improving your weight, not moving up weight for 10 years straight and just saying, oh, I've been continually improving my form for 10 years straight. It doesn't work like that. So you have to just look at the obvious, look at your program. Are you progressing? Are you hitting PRs? Are you moving up in the load in your hands and the reps that you're using while obviously standardized or maintaining or progressing form? Are you approaching your nutrition properly? Are you adhering to it properly? And just the simple stuff, are you doing something consistently and again, adhering to it for long periods of time? Everyone gets so caught up on the nuance. But again, you just have to do something consistent. And literally, do you do something every single day for weeks and months and years on end? The people that ask me questions about, I can't lose body fat, what am I doing wrong? You're telling me right now that you've never actually done anything consistent with your diet, because it's impossible to not be able to figure out. Yes, there's occasionally outliers where, you really could have someone do a horrible prep and wreck their body. You have the female competitor that eats 600 calories and does 4 hours of cardio a day. Yes, coming out the other side of that, you might have some things you want to address with hormones. You really could put your body in such a bad point that the whole calorie in model at least doesn't on the surface look like it's working well because your body's so messed up. But for 99% of people, if you're telling me I don't know how to lose weight, all you're telling me is you've never actually been consistent with your diet. Because all that it is if you actually adhered to anything consistently, all you'd have to do is make one change and then you'd know exactly what type of response that would produce. The same with putting on weight. Like, oh, I can't put on weight. All you're telling me is if you've ever put on weight, you've never been consistent and adhered to a diet, because all you have to do is have your baseline and continually add to it. And even if you don't know what you're doing, and even if you don't train hard, you at least start putting on weight, getting fatter. So if you're telling me you can't put on weight, you've never actually measured your food, you've never actually been in a structured surplus for an extended period of time, because there's no mystery behind how to do it. So it's the simple things of, instead of splitting hairs about the perfect diet, the perfect workout nutrition, which is all great, actually adhere to something consistently and then see what happens. Look at sleep. This is my favorite. Team no sleep. People confuse work ethic and the ability to get stuff done and have very little sleep. Don't get me wrong, there may be periods of life where, again, maybe you're starting a business, you've got a new family, you've got babies at home. I'm not saying life is muscle building, but if for you it is, then you better rearrange your life to make sleep a priority. There is nothing cool, there's nothing effective, there's nothing optimal about team no sleep if your goal is to put on as much muscle as possible. Now, again, obviously, if you're a business owner or whatever, I could make the argument why everyone needs sleep, because, again, the further you progress in anything, you realize it's not just about the hours you put in, it's the quality of the hours you put in. And again, if you think that your quality is as high as it can get on low sleep, you just don't have anything to compare it to. So again, people will, again, look at what's the perfect cycle, what drug should I be taking, what's the supplement I should take, what's, again, the magic split I should be doing, and at the same time, they're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. You're just skipping over the easy stuff that's hard to do. And then other things are really just mental things, attributes that I see from people. And one of them is just a willingness to endure pain and a willingness to suffer. And again, I'm not saying this to be dramatic. It's obviously all self-imposed. I'm not comparing this to people that are enduring pain, like, that live with chronic pain or have a disease or something. I'm not comparing this to people that are going to war, going to battle. I'm not one of those people. This is all voluntary. This is stuff that's a luxury to be able to go do. Again, it's still better than people that with their free time just choose to sit on the couch and get fatter until they die. But that being said, I'm not overly dramatic. But the reality is, bodybuilding is, to some degree, you're going to have to endure physical pain. And I've seen it. My professional opinion is some people are not willing to do it. I have seen people that are ready to bail on sets when they are legitimately probably 8 reps short of failure. So it's really the pain. They can have all the smartest ideas, all this great plan, all this great structure. They know every single angle. They got their protractor out, and then they're ready to bail on a set before they even get remotely close to effective reps. And so that's one of those things. Again, all the information and all the perfect plan, that's not their problem. Their problem is that they are unwilling to actually take something where they actually have to put some work in. And instead of looking at the obvious, they'd rather look at, do I need a new protractor? Is my angle off? Or do I am doing something wrong? These same people sometimes that might be 8 reps short of failure are also the ones that legitimately think that they're overtraining. So at some capacity, you're going to have to endure pain. You're going to have to endure discomfort. And that discomfort comes in the form especially of diet. So discomfort of force feeding, discomfort of being hungry all the time, the discomfort of it's not easy in your schedule. It's not easy to have food all the time. It's not easy to prep for an hour every single day. It's not easy to, not eat out maybe at a restaurant at some point in time, or to have to eat out of the Tupperware, or to disrupt an event, or just people look at you if you're weirdos. Again, most people, once you get used to it, it doesn't bother you, but there is some degree of discomfort with all of that stuff. So again, really more than anything else is you need to take adherence and ownership of those things. Those things, honestly, are responsible for 90% of your progress, and they're the things that you need to master first. If you have not mastered those things, then don't worry about the other shit. Now, at the same time, if you're capable of working on mastering those things while seamlessly integrating other stuff, that's fine. Now, again, don't get me wrong. None of the nuance is wrong. None of the nuance of, like, again, it's the same thing. Again, one of the things I meant to say too is the big mentality. Last one I also left off is the mentality is a growth mentality. That is the last one that will encompass a whole lot of stuff. So we have all of those things: your ability to, document progressive overload, to adhere to nutrition, to make sleep a priority, a willingness to endure pain, discomfort, and a growth mentality. And again, this is the balance between where, not saying that nuanced stuff is bad, because if you don't have a growth mentality, you might not be able to look at stuff when it's staring you in the face that it should be. But at the same time, you don't want to get caught in the weeds with that. So again, realize 95% of your results, 90% of your results, made up percentage, but a large percentage of your progress comes from mastering those things. Now, again, if you are capable of doing all that stuff, with lots of people are, it's not like these two separate camps. It doesn't have to be. It's not just people getting lost in the nuance that never actually work hard or do any of those things. And it's not just, hardcore meatheads that feel like they have to do a barbell bench squat or a barbell bench press, or they're a bad human being. There are people in between that are absolutely able to work their ass off and also find it interesting to try and figure out what works best for them, and just seamlessly integrate it within that work ethic, within that consistency and adherence. And so all I mean by that, the growth mentality is massively important. And again, this is a simple example, but there's so many things that fall into that. Again, of thinking you have to do a barbell bench press. Again, I'm speaking from personal experience. I've wrecked my shoulders so many times for feeling I had to do that exercise, probably for a decade on and off of shoulder issues, and realizing it might have been as simple as stopping a half an inch off your chest. Realize it's changing the bench angle 5 degrees. It's little things like that to understand, yes, everyone's body is different. So again, some of the subtle variations, some of that nuance is very important. And if you have a growth mentality, you won't be attached to the fact of an arbitrary bar touching your chest. You might be willing for it to stop half an inch off, God forbid, or to be on a 10-degree incline or a 10-degree decline instead. So that's where a growth mentality comes in, is also not getting stuck on things that are, again, you're just emotional or you're biased to for reasons that, again, you're just staring the obvious in the face. And so again, if you can have those big things in place, if you're able to adhere those things, then absolutely find the best split for you, find the best exercises, find the best angle. By all means, get your protractor out. Maybe I'll make Hypertrophy Coach protractor. But again, just don't blame things on this little nuanced stuff, overlooking the obvious big things that lead to the most results. And again, I would say the worst case scenario with all of that stuff, again, is the people that turn the nuanced stuff into teams. And so again, you'll have now in the industry, people have created teams about training to failure versus training short of a failure. Like, I can't think of anything stupider to argue about, as opposed to, this split is better, bro split's bad, push-pull lower is good, full body's good. I can't think of a stupider thing to argue about. And again, realizing that's why you will have so many examples of people that have had a high level of success on a bro split, and so many people that have had a high level of success starting on push, pull, lower, full body, or whatever it is, because those people have those other things I talked about. With those things that are responsible for 90% of your results, again, think about 90%. That's a big percent. That's why you can show success regardless of split, regardless of where you train to, regardless of the exercises that you do, because of those traits and because of those characteristics that are more important than those other things. And then again, just realize, again, do the obvious things. Again, of listen to your body, realize that nuance is important. It's also not an excuse to just run your body into the ground and destroy yourself and do some things that don't work or don't fit for you. But at the same time, don't blame things on things that you shouldn't. And again, just lastly, realize, again, with all these things, with all that nuanced stuff, just really, I've touched on this on other videos, but keep it out of the mindset of right or wrong. Keep it out of the mindset of just inherently good or bad. As long as people are involved with the process of muscle building, there's going to be individual application, individual adherence. And again, as long as we're not training robots, there isn't going to be these definitive better or worse, right or wrong. All of it's going to really come down to a certain extent, what fits best and what applies best to the individual. But most importantly, don't ever lose sight of the things that are responsible for the largest portion of your results.